Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on WhoKnewPodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at WhoKnewPodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at WhoKnewPodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today's episode is episode 9 of season 6, Night Terrors. When the psychic paper receives a message that reads, "Please save me from the monsters," the doctor decides to make a house call. This episode is written by Mark Gatiss, directed by Richard Clark. It originally aired on the 3rd of September 2011 and was watched by 7.07 million viewers. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves. Kelsey.
Hi, please save me from this podcast. Just kidding.
Hi, this is Josh.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank.
Hey, it's Heather.
Hi, this is a staticky Brian.
Hello, this is Auburn.
And today we have two guests from Temple of Geek, Monica and Nate. Say hi.
Hi, this is Monica.
And this is Nate.
Welcome to the Who Knew podcast. Monica, can you tell us how you got introduced into Doctor Who?
Well, that was mainly Nate's doing. So a lot of it was he and my brother were really into Doctor Who, and they got my son into Doctor Who, and I used to kind of just stand by and walk by them and be like, "Why are you watching this cheesy show? These special effects are terrible. What is the big deal with this show?" And I sat down and I watched 11's first episode. Like, they were just like, just watch one episode, and I watched it and I became obsessed very, very quickly. So now I get it.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, for myself, I had a couple friends who were posting stuff about it. I was like, oh, I know about it because I've heard about it and seen things. And mainly the Fourth Doctor was the main image that I had seen in my head when anyone talked about Doctor Who before I knew about the show, or fully knew about the show. And then her brother was watching it. So I started watching a couple episodes, like, this is weird, but it's kind of funny and cool. And so I went, after watching a couple episodes there, I went back and started with 9 and then just kind of barreled through it and then took her along with me.
Nice.
Basically, that's how it went.
Very cool. Again, welcome to the Who Knew podcast.
Thank you.
George is 8 years old and terrified of monsters in his cupboard/wardrobe. His parents don't know how to help him, and his mother, Claire, says he needs a doctor. After putting him to bed, she leaves for work. Quietly, George pleads to the universe to save him from the monsters. The doctor's psychic paper receives the message, and off to the rescue goes the doctor, Amy, and Rory. They arrive at an apartment complex and go door to door searching for a child in need. Among those they talk to are Jim Purcell, the landlord, and Mrs. Rossiter, an elderly neighbor. As Rory and Amy walk by George's window, he peeps out and hears Rory tease that maybe they should let the monsters gobble him up. Amy and Rory take the lift to the next floor, but instead, it plummets to the ground floor. When it opens, they have vanished. The doctor sees George peering out and knocks on the door.
George is such a cutie.
And the doctor with little kids, especially Matt Smith, is the best. So right away, no matter what you see after that, I'm excited for this episode.
I always get a kick out of when they do puns like a house call and the doctor and things like that.
I didn't realize how much time the doctor spent with little kids. And you see it first with Amy, right? But until you guys said that, like, he does spend a lot of time, well, 11 at least, with little kids.
Yeah.
Because they saw the magic.
Not 12.
No.
Well, 12 got a whole classroom.
He did.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, he was thrilled.
I try to forget that episode, but yes, he did. One thing I thought was weird about like this part is I don't understand why Amy, Rory, and the doctor got split up, because he saw the kid down below and he's like one floor down. He takes the stairs and they take the lift. I don't know what happened.
Do they meet up before they do that, though?
They do, but it's odd that they just walk right by the next door. I mean, they're going on different levels, each knocking on all these doors, and they pass by his. So it's just, plot device rather than any kind of logical thing that any of these characters, would do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
we just heard Rory say maybe the monsters will gobble him up, which is, I think, when I was watching with Auburn, he pointed out is not in Rory's character. Like, it was kind of like a weird thing for Rory to say. So for me, the doctor sees them acting this way. And even like, did you find any scared kids? I found scary kids. Does that count? The doctor's like, you guys are not going to be helpful in this situation. Why don't, in his mind, let's split up.
Right.
And I'm going to send you on a wild goose chase. And I'm going to go, because I already know who the scared kid is. I'm going to go deal with it myself and send you off.
He also sees George in the window draw back in fear as they're passing. So he knows something's up.
I did like the young twin girls, that reference to the horror going, okay, they're going to do a little tongue-in-cheek and a little fun with it.
Yeah, The Shining.
Yeah. And Amy even saying, this can't always be planet's history and stuff. Well, this falls into the stuff category, Amy. It just seemed Amy and Rory did not take it seriously, that it is not really their character after everything that we've seen.
Also, too, I think he needed their help to find him, not with what he was going to do. And now that we're talking about this, this doctor kind of has a habit of getting tunnel vision and forgetting about the companions for a good amount of time. And then, promises he'll save them when Amy's in, mortal danger. Or promises Rory that he'll save Amy when Amy's in mortal danger. But he kind of does that kind of often.
He did that in this episode, actually.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Not to skip ahead, but like at the end, like Rory says, "Doctor," and he's like, "Oh, like he forgot they were even there."
Yeah,
exactly.
I kind of took that as like classic Who, where they would try to find ways to split up the Doctor and the companions, in the opening. So I just that's just a nod for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of them. It's interesting to see how they do that for the different doctors, and I think with this one, it's just he just gets tunnel vision and isn't paying attention, then someone's taken away.
Well, and Amy and Rory are nice because they take care of themselves, so they'll take their whole story somewhere else, like together. So that's nice that he doesn't have to invent too many ways to get them to wander off.
Right.
Yeah, the beginning of this, at first, I don't know why, but I was expecting Fear Her, and so I was coming into this with a little different expectation. And I think most of us have talked about, we watch it twice for the podcast, and this one I watched it both times, and I still couldn't figure out my feelings about it. So that's interesting, especially this beginning part where it's different. But yeah, I think it grew on me watching it twice.
Well, Auburn, I agree with you, because depending on what mood I'm in, depends on how I like it or not. I mean, it isn't the show, it's what I bring to it on this one. It was going back and forth. I could see the problems rather than just really going along with the story. So I see what you mean. It totally gets me the same way.
I think it gets me the same as Frank. I had seen this episode once before, and I've seen every Doctor Who episode from 9 to 13, on repeat forever. But this one I only watched once, because the first time I watched it, I was scared and I was terrified, and I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to watch this again. I have no interest in watching this again. And then when I watched it for the podcast now, I was like, oh, it wasn't so bad. But I also watched it in the morning, it was bright and early, before I watched it in the dark, and it was in the evening and scary.
Yeah, so when I said you were going to come on, I was like, which is the scariest episode for you?
I wasn't a fan of going back and watching it originally, mainly, and nothing against the man, because he's seems to be a nice man, but it was a Gaddis episode, and I forgot which episodes he wrote until I was watching this, oh, this is bad, which ones did he write? But all I remembered were the recent ones, like Cold War and Sleep No More and Crimson Horror, and those were all just the lower episodes for me in the recent era.
Yeah.
So when I watched this, I was like, oh wow, this one actually was a lot better, I guess I should say.
We, as a podcast, we did a Halloween episode, and this was my recommendation to watch on Halloween.
I wanted to point out a couple of things visually that I noticed in the beginning of this episode. And I don't usually notice things like this, so I'm, I don't know what kind of crack I was on. But
please share.
When we first see the TARDIS land, they show it in a reflection, in a puddle.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen this episode before, but I was like, did I forget something about mirrors? Does this mean something? And then I was excited to find out whether that was symbolism that I missed, but it really wasn't. It was just a cool shot. Then when the old lady was pushing the cart down the building, I noticed they zoom in on a really large crack in the wall, and which is obviously we've already done that. That's over. But I was like, oh, the large crack. Wait, no, we already did the large crack. So I think it was just cool cinematography, but I was making things out of nothing, which is actually fine because it's almost like trying to freak you out and make you think things and make you unsure about what you're walking into. And
I think that was a big deal with Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss to begin with, was all these like hidden clues that later on would lead to something. So I feel like they trained us to always be looking for things.
Right?
Yeah.
That's probably what it was. We've been trained. The third and last thing I noticed, which I don't think they show until later, but it doesn't spoil anything, is the inside of their apartment. The layout is the same as Jackie and Rose's apartment.
It's close.
Really?
It's close. I caught that last night, but it's not. The door's in a different place, but it does have that little cutout window to the kitchen.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god. And they're probably all cookie cutter.
Yeah, the apartment complex is a council estate, so it's more or less like the project. So they're all built to be the same. So that's why Jackie's flat and Alex's flat look the same.
I pictured the Christmas tree spinning out of
Yeah.
control.
Well, I thought this building, this location was great. And I think with the cinematography, it's also the lighting. They used a lot with the lighting and the shadows to give George the fear when he's holding the flashlight, but also just the lighting on this location at the beginning and the way that it's angled is such a great shot to set you up that it's just a little bit odd, but everything is so uniform in the way that it looks.
What you're talking about, it made me think of a needle in a haystack. Like every building looks the same. How are they going to find George? That's what I got from that.
And you know how to find a needle in a haystack, right?
You burned the place down.
You use a magnet.
Both work. Both work.
I immediately was like, oh, Eugene, that's a smart idea. And then you guys are like, magnet.
No,
Let's not go crazy.
that's not as fun.
I will say real quick though that since we're talking about visuals, and the whole episode is shot really cinematically. It's lit that way. It's composed that way. And the more I'm looking at it as we're talking right now, and even just the editing and the shot choice, it's obviously supposed to invoke like a horror movie. That's obvious. But the more I'm looking at it, they've gotten more cinematic at this point in the run. But this is a big leap towards that feel.
I like how they play on the fear of shadows on a child's wall, and no matter what harmless toy you have, it always casts a scary shadow when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
It's super relatable.
Yeah, it's totally super relatable. But if you have a kid with these fear problems, don't buy him toys like this. There was like a pig-headed marionette puppet doll hanging on the wall. Your child has problems. Help your child. It just was bizarre.
There was a perception filter on that doll.
Going on that, watching it this time, I was a little disappointed that we didn't see that doll in the dollhouse.
Yeah.
Some people are not disappointed.
I'm not that disappointed personally.
I was a child. My child bedroom had a puppet tree in it. So I slept with puppets in my bedroom, and it cast a very scary shadow because my parents put the nightlight right under that puppet tree. So the fact, just like the idea that the scariest place in the universe is a child's bedroom, like Monica says, very relatable. That is the scariest place in the universe. So
That explains a lot.
One other element besides the visuals that add to the scariness is the wonderful sound work that they do. Especially watching it a second time, you hear the lift and the lady with the creaking cart and all of this stuff that, they really build throughout the rest of the episode with George's fears.
One of the things I noticed too, because you're talking about the lady with the cart, you hear her breathing too, her like exhausted breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of creepy in itself.
And I like how inside it's like very sinister, but outside you can tell it's just an old lady like having trouble.
I really like how a little boy can contact the doctor. He's like super powerful that it reads on the psychic paper. I thought that was a great way to open this because, Doctor Who is for kids and that's their hero. So I felt very like it was cathartic for younger viewers to be like, if I need some help, I can reach out to the doctor and he'll find me and make a house call. And then Rory reads the psychic paper when they're waiting for the lift to come. I enjoyed that a companion can read the psychic paper.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a good point.
didn't think about that.
And it was a flashback to New Earth. Why they were on New Earth because Face of Bo called them there.
Yep, that's all the way in season 2.
Didn't Amy do the same thing? She prayed to the Easter Bunny or something,
Oh, yeah.
and the doctor
Yeah.
showed up.
But that was more
It just
coincidence,
crashed.
I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fate or whatever.
But same
No,
something.
the TARDIS took him where he needed to be. Okay.
I agree,
Right,
Heather.
right.
River calls the doctor on the psychic paper.
Sure.
Yeah, for silence in the library.
Yeah. George's dad, Alex, answers the door and thinks his wife called someone to help their son. The doctor looks through a photo album containing pictures of George as an infant. Alex tells the doctor that George has always been a bit off, but it has gotten so bad lately that he and his wife have been considering sending him somewhere to get help. His imagination exaggerates everything, so now he believes the noise from the lift is a creature breathing, and Mrs. Rossiter is an evil witch. Outside, Mrs. Rossiter brings down her trash and adds her bag to the accumulated pile. It starts to rustle, and when she goes to examine it, it sucks her in and she disappears.
Oh, that's great. I literally wrote down, "Run, Elsie."
Even
She
if
did
this
not.
lady had never seen a horror movie to like stay away from quiet noises within something, why go so near the trash?
Probably because she's already going batty. She was talking to herself.
He said it was the first
That's a
time.
good point. Hey man, I think we've all been talking to ourselves more recently than others.
And I don't know about you, if I see the trash movie and I think it's either a rat or a cat, not a kid
not a
lying in the
kid.
middle of the
Yeah.
trash.
George, you're the little boy who stays in his room all the time. Is that you in the trash?
Either that or George has done that before, and you're like, you're weird, George.
Who tells me
Yeah.
George ain't never been in the trash?
Yeah, the first time I watched that, I was like, what is going on? Because just before, I think we lose Amy and Rory first. And then you see, the woman being sucked in by the garbage. And I was like, wait, what is doing it? Because it's two totally different ways of disappearing. Like where the woman who's being sucked in almost looks like she's being grabbed. And then
Right.
Amy and Rory are like, so I'm like, are these portals? Are these like, what's going on? So, the whole time I'm wondering like, why are they being pulled in this way? What's causing it, before we realize what it is, obviously.
Yeah, and now I'm actually at a bit of a loss. I'm not really connecting the dots as to why that happened there, and even in the elevator, if the cupboard is in the room.
They gave a clue in the swipe that they did. They had a picture of George being scared, and the camera panned, and it's kind of swiped along to see her. So it gave you a little bit of clue that George is involved in this.
Yeah, he's involved, but I feel like it's one of those Doctor Who devices to make something a lot more scary than it actually is at the end. Because he was scared of Amy and Rory because like, what if we'll let the monsters take them? So that was part of the reason they were abducted, and then she was abducted because he's scared of her, thinking she's like this scary witch. But the devices in which they disappear are just like to amplify the fears in the episode, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he just has control over the area, not. Yeah. Okay, I buy it.
But what's his range?
Yeah. it depends on what his role is.
Is there like a scary actor that he watched on TV that he'll make disappear?
Right, exactly. Like the kid from the Twilight Zone.
You had to get 20 for that though for the role.
Oh, I heard that, Nate. Very good.
At this point, when Alex is looking at pictures, watching it the second time, I was trying to see if there was some sort of seeding that we'll find out later as far as his relationship with Claire and their son. And I thought that this was the best place to put that, and I'll save that conversation till the reveal.
But you can see him looking at the pictures of him and his son and the family unit, so he's looking at that going, he does want to help, he is a good guy. But right at the beginning, he's just a little more gruff. So I think they wanted to tone that down, going, he really does
But
help.
that's actually a question I have is who calls social services on themselves?
The British.
Well, no, I think it was more that she wanted to hire a doctor. Well,
Yeah.
also that may be.
Social services could be just call it like
Calling their
mental
doctor.
health services.
Right, and it may be run differently in Britain, not ridiculously like in the United States.
I was thinking it might be, a British thing, because when
Yeah.
I think of the term social services,
Yeah.
I think they're going to take your kids away.
They actually care about each other over there.
Yes.
I'm
Or
not
the
trying to get
people
political.
No. Or the people in social services in Britain may actually be supported by the people who they need.
Well, even the three of them, the doctor, Amy, and Rory, came pretending to be community support that would just randomly knock on your door from the township, or what do they call it? The council? Like that's
Yeah.
the local government. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the idea that happens much in the projects, though. They were not exactly
they
welcomed.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed that with Claire is she was absent during the episode, and I noticed they did that same thing with Craig. They made the mother absent during the entire episode, and then I was thinking, like, I don't remember if this is accurate or not, but weren't the kids that Clara was looking after, wasn't their mom absent also? Like, wasn't
their mom had died.
Oh, okay. Well, she's definitely absent then.
They have the Walt Disney complex.
Yeah, where the thing in the Disney movies is that if you have the mom, the problems are going to be solved. So that's why there's no.
Because, a mom would have reacted very differently. For example, like, this man coming in and
He would not have welcomed a strange man into her house.
Yeah.
Right. Plus, the problem was the father wasn't quite accepting him. The mother was obviously accepting the boy a little bit more, at least. Or seemingly. Oh, well, she was the one that wanted to call the doctor.
But that wasn't a matter of rejecting him. That was her trying to, find a solution.
Right. Yeah. Also, budgetarily, that's one day of shooting for the mom.
Fair.
I really liked the scene between the doctor and Alex. Matt Smith is so good, and it's also well written that kind of at the end of the scene, you kind of accept why, this is why the doctor's there. This is why Alex would be like, okay, come and help my son, because he explains his presence really well.
Yeah.
For once.
That's always interesting with Doctor Who, how they can get him into the situation with new people as quickly as possible. And I thought this one was really good. I thought Matt Smith was great in just kind of being both that, I'm harmless and I have concern for your son.
I love hearing Brian say things nice about Matt Smith.
I like him.
I know, but I come from a place of exactly. I come from a former place.
Right.
He's still not Tennant.
What's funny? It's striking me now, saying that how he kind of gets into, how he gets people to accept him quickly, and even all the doctors do this, if I'm not mistaken. They just start asking questions, so the person gets interrupted by asking, "Why are you here?" by answering questions about their problems. So he just turns the focus on them, so they have no other choice than but to engage in what he's doing. I'm gonna try that.
Okay, great.
He gaslights people is what happens.
Good point. Oh, all right.
But it's okay as long as the outcome is for something positive. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Well, we saw what happens in the Angels Take Manhattan. So. Was the outcome long-term positive? I don't know.
I do enjoy when he introduced himself. Like, it happens with every doctor, but I noticed it specifically in this episode when he has the psychic paper up, and he's like, "Oh, you're from social services," and just his face lighting up, like, "Yeah, where I'm from."
I agree. I always like that moment because it's a reminder to me that the doctor doesn't control what's on the psychic paper. It's the person who's reading it that reads into it. So Alex is expecting social services. So but I agree that those moments are great because the doctor, either he's surprised that what's on the paper, or he's like, "That's right."
He's really good at yes and.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like an improv thing where Alex threw to him and he goes, "Yes, I am this thing now."
Plus, he got lucky that George's name was on the door.
Yes, I love that. But it reminds me of the Christmas Carol episode where he pulls out the paper and he's like, I'm a responsible adult. And he's like, the kid's like, "Oh, it's just squiggly lines." He's like, "Finally, a lie too big."
Yeah, so I guess sometimes the doctor can control a little bit of what's on the psych paper, but it's still it's still the person.
Yeah,
usually
it's their impression.
The person who sees it.
It's what they need to what they need to see in order to let him pass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that line. I'm just gonna read this interchange between them. The doctor, pantophobia. Alex, what? The doctor, that's what it's called, pantophobia. Not fear of pants, though. If that's what you're thinking, fear of everything, including pants, I suppose. In that case, sorry, go on.
That exchange is really great.
It was good.
Yeah.
I agree with Nate. This does remind me a lot of Craig the Lodger, I think, that episode where, he does a really good job playing off of this type of character, the straight man in the weird situation that lets the doctor be a little more fantastical and get that grounding from the other character in the scene.
Right.
One more thing here is that when Alex is looking at the pictures, and then you hear in the background the TV playing, the announcer on the TV says that he's watching BBC One on Saturday night, the same channel that Doctor Who is on, and that's when this would have aired. So I thought that was like meta, but also cool. George is so scared he can't sleep and accidentally knocks over a lamp. Alex and the doctor go to check on him. When George hears he is a doctor, he asks if he is there to take him away. The doctor tells him no. He's there to talk about the monsters. When the doctor goes to open the cupboard, George is terrified. Alex tells the doctor that they put anything that scares George in the cupboard. Alex leaves to answer a knock at the door, which is Mr. Purcell, the landlord. They are late with the rent, and Mr. Purcell demands payment soon. The doctor tries to distract George from the discussion and plays with his toys. He sonics the cupboard and finds that the readings of the cupboard are off the scale. Now he is scared. Alex returns and goes to open the cupboard, but is stopped by the doctor. The monsters are real.
That was the most dramatic reading you've ever done, Eugene.
To be fair, this scene is really dramatic. There's this one point where they're in the kitchen discussing what happened and whether or not they should open the door, right? The cupboard door.
Right.
And if it's okay, I just want to read this one line. It says, the doctor tells Alex because they're freaking out. And he says, you know, he's trying to convince him to let him stay and help his child. And he says, through crimson stars and silent stars and tumbling nebulas like oceans set on fire, through empires of glass and civilization of pure thought and a whole terrible, wonderful universe of possibilities, you see these eyes, they're old eyes. And one thing I can tell you, Alex, the monsters are real.
Yeah.
And like
great.
it's like so powerful in this little like back and forth banter, and I'm just like, oh, like, why do we not quote this more often?
I think that's a great line, but I think that comes later.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah,
Whoa,
I
wait,
thought
that-
this because you said monsters were real, and that's when he says it. So that's why I thought that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's
That's
okay.
okay, Monica. We like you more than Eugene.
Auburn, mute Brian. But Monica, going off of what you said, I like the line where Alex and the doctor rush in after the lamp has fallen, and he goes to George, "Are you having a nightmare?" He goes, "It wasn't a nightmare. I wasn't asleep." I'm like, "Oh, that's great."
Poor baby.
Poor child. That line actually broke my heart.
But I was like, "Wow, way to bring it in such a quick way."
They had kind of I guess you would call it editorial or sound effects mix up or whatever. I noticed it in this watch. The lamp knocks over and you hear like this glass break, like the bulb just shattered, and the dad just goes in, picks it up, and they carry on like nothing happened. Like, oh, it just fell over.
That's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense. It makes it dramatic, but then like when he's not like, oh man, there's all glass all over the floor.
Yeah. Also, there's hundreds of examples of why the heck does this child own this toy in this? Why does he have so many toys that move on their own, first of all? And second of all, like they're all weird. They're like robots with the head spins all the way around.
Well,
And
they
like,
don't move on their own. The doctor did that with his Sonic.
But I think they're all toys that can move on their own if you.
Yeah, you
hit
want
it
Yeah, they're
start
battery
right?
powered.
toys.
They're
They're
battery
built
powered.
to move.
I
You
used
were
to have
never
one
a
of
young
those.
boy. Those are cool.
How was the doctor going to Sonic something unless there was
Yeah.
toys there for him to Sonic?
Right.
I'm just saying, if there are creepy toys in the cupboard, what did those ones look like? Because the ones he has out of the cupboard are kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
They stopped getting him those toys and started getting him the Transformers knockoffs.
One of them is Optimus Prime. If you took a good look from the Michael Bay garbage movies.
Is it an actual Optimus Prime or is it a knockoff?
No, I think it's one of the kid versions of Optimus Prime.
Okay.
Ah.
Well, do they have to like adjust how they look? Like, can they just use off the shelf stuff, or do they take it and then manipulate it a little bit so
I
it's
think
not?
if it's off the shelf stuff, they'd have to get the licensing. But
Well, there's a whole store where people make products for films.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure they got the toys from that store, and they were like, "Give us robots that look like." Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of those robots, I just see it like in Chinatown. You can see them at like swap meets, that type of stuff. So that's not a problem, I guess, as far as rights. But other than the Optimus Prime, I noticed that one of the toys that casts a shadow is Serpentera from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the end of season 2. If you remember that, when the original cast they change out the Rangers. And that's where they
I'm
get
sorry,
the different.
I'm not up on my episode recollections of Power Rangers.
Well, it's morphin' time.
Was that when they swapped Billy out for the little boy?
Not quite, but it's where Jason is swapped out. Tommy is still.
So Tommy's the White Ranger at this point?
Yeah, Tommy's the
Okay.
White Ranger. And then the Red Ranger, the Black Ranger, and the Yellow Ranger are different.
They were like the proteges at first or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I did like the doctor's use of the Rubik's Cube, because he can solve it easily, but then throwing it away must be broken. Let's put it in the cupboard to get the reaction.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Oh, so he said that on purpose. I didn't catch that.
I figured he was legitimately frustrated.
Yeah,
Oh.
me
Yeah.
too. I just really like the respect the doctor gives George in this scene. Alex says, anything that frightens him goes in the cupboard. And the doctor looks at George and says, is that where the monsters go? But he's relating it to George. And I just love that because, that's kind of how I like to live my own life. I think kids should get the same respect as adults do.
Yeah, I think it's just part of what we're talking about, like how Matt Smith is great with kids, and then that shows in the scene that you just mentioned, like he can relate to George on an equal level.
I'm sure that's validating for little kids watching the show.
Absolutely.
After they pee their pants because of all the creepy stuff, they're like, oh, but the doctor's nice.
Yeah, this really bored. This is a very ironic show because this embraces that the show is for kids because it's so kid-centric with the story, but there ain't no way a kid that age is gonna watch this show and sleep for a week.
Yeah, we had an issue with our child where the first time he watched the Demons Run episode where Amy's baby just kind of like melts and disintegrates because it was the flesh, and we had an infant that age at the time.
Oh no.
Oh no.
So my kid, who's now 16, but at the time he was like 7 or 8, just lost it and he could not watch that episode. And I was like, why is the kid crying so much? Because I was watching the episode when they saw it. And, we had to explain to him over and over that it wasn't a real baby. And he was just distraught.
Well, that's sad.
That's the type of thing that would have creeped me out as well. And by the way, they'll probably remember that for the rest of their lives. If they don't remember anything about Doctor Who, they'll remember the image of a melting baby forever.
Probably.
Not to,
Nice.
Did anyone else do the math on the rent that they owed?
No.
You mean like what it is in dollars?
Yeah.
It was,
The
I think it was like
$440?
around a little less than $500
In 2011.
In the projects.
in the project.
I was just really curious when I heard it. I immediately whipped out my calculator.
I like the Mr. Purcell character is the perfect guy to hate. So that I'm
Yeah.
glad that they had him there to
Yeah.
do all the things that he needed to do. But I was really surprised that they didn't lean into like the George being more scared of Bernard, the dog, because the dog was like more scary to me than Mr. Purcell. But they
The dog was cute.
I found Mr. Purcell more
I
scary.
thought the dog looked very cute and innocent, but they just put a bunch of growling sounds over this cute and innocent looking dog.
well, I did one of the growling sounds remind anyone else of Prisoner Zero
Oh, yeah.
from
Mhm.
Amy and Rory's first episodes?
The
Yeah.
eyeball reminded me of that actually.
Oh,
The-
yeah.
the not Prisoner Zero, but what is the Atraxi?
Yeah.
Yep. Wow, good job, Josh.
Yeah. Oh, see you later.
On a high note.
I can stand it.
But at the same time, the doctor's reaction to Mr. Purcell using the Sonic to start the toys, I thought was really great. And I really like the use of the Sonic in this episode. It's balanced just about right, where it's helpful for the story, but it doesn't like overcome any big obstacles
Yeah, it's not the super tool.
or even defeat anybody. Yeah. Like, and that's great later when he tries to use it on the dolls and they're wood, and he says he really has to make a setting for wood.
That's so good.
Oh, I didn't
embarrassing,
catch that.
yeah.
That's
Brilliant.
funny.
And remember, Auburn, you can't hurt a dog because you know what's coming up. So it has to be the evil, landlord.
Yes. No, I know. Just me, I had some run-ins with animals when
Right.
I was younger, so I think I carry that into my perceptions of them in media.
Like melting babies.
Those traumas, they're lifelong.
Amy and Rory wake up in a darkened house. Rory turns on his flashlight as they search and find the kitchen. Amy finds an odd electric lantern and a fake frying pan made of wood. They also find a huge, head-sized glass eye in one of the kitchen drawers. They continue to search the house, followed by a being in the shadows. They find that the front doors don't have any knobs or handles, and the clock in the foyer isn't real as the hands on the clock are painted on. They hear a child giggling and go to investigate.
Creepy.
I like this seeding of where they actually are. This was
Yes.
like great for me. That's why when I mentioned about the photos, if they did this well of where they are, I wanted them to do the other thing with Alex and Claire just as equally as well, because we're getting clues of, without spoiling it, they're in a dollhouse. That's why things aren't exactly what they are.
Oh,
Like,
and
there's
you
no-
mean the reveal of what happens with the photographs later is just like a one-shot thing?
Well, because I'm trying to think of how story-wise, writing-wise, production-wise, visually, that they could have seeded the reveal of who George is earlier.
I like that George was just a normal kid up till now. That you don't think
Yeah, I'm okay
he's
with that.
anything.
I think we're all. I see what you're saying, and I think that would have been very interesting. But I think that would have taken away from the tension that the big bad is the dollhouse. The big bad is the creepy closet. I think it would have diluted that focus.
Because then the big bad would be George.
But I do
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. Because I do.
I'll
Oh,
get
go ahead.
more into the detail once the reveal is, because I don't want to spoil that prematurely.
Yeah, because I think I think I actually agree with you a little bit, but it's a balance. I'm curious as to what you have to say.
And I don't have a solution. I'm just trying to think of where I would have put stuff. That's all.
Yeah.
But back to where they are, when Amy and Rory are first in the dollhouse, I think it's Rory that says, "We can work out where we are when we are." I was like, that's great time travel, like staple
Yeah.
dialogue, when we are.
And I think they're in 1700 and something.
I
Yeah.
like how in that scene there, if it's the same scene I'm thinking of, Rory is very savvy.
Yes.
He's very he knows what's going on and what could possibly be going on and what possibly could go on.
I like how the first thing he says, "Oh my gosh, we're dead again."
And he's not like fearful or anything. He's more
Right,
like
right.
He's like
exasperated.
annoyed.
What in it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. We've talked about on our show how he actually always has been really great, but he seemed much more meek and the butt of the joke earlier on. But I like how they've upped his game, but he's still the comic relief.
He has a great line at the
Yeah,
end.
he's gotten sassier.
Yeah.
Why did they get their kid a creepy dollhouse though?
Well,
Yeah,
a
that's
very
the-
detailed.
Yeah, very
creepy
detailed. And also,
dollhouse.
what about those dolls that they're alternate? Like, why? What are those dolls from? I mean, maybe they're from, like, I guess the backstory could be the wife's, great grandmother had those dolls
Yeah.
and they were passed down and they tried to give it to the boy and.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Because a dollhouse isn't a toy you give to a boy.
Yeah.
So it would have been inherited from like the mom.
Right. Yeah. Well,
But what is the whole thing with the kids, the little kid voices in the song?
Creepy.
Yeah.
Like,
It's scary.
I thought it was going to be tied into like the two little girls.
Mm.
Because,
Yeah.
like, I thought it was somehow going to be tied into that, but that doesn't manifest.
Because even once you understand what's happening, that still doesn't quite make sense. Why is that a scary thing that's put in the closet?
Right, it reminded
The
me of
dollhouse.
No,
the
the
song.
children laughing, like, because to us it's creepy
Mm.
because of the juxtaposition of creepy visuals and disembodied children laughing. That's creepy to us, but to a kid, it's just kids laughing.
Unless he was scared of those kids.
Right, which I thought would be like those twin girls, like maybe I thought the twin girls maybe like teased him or something, and they turned into these,
Then in
the
that
first
case-
original dolls that are walking
Right.
around.
Maybe they were the apartment above him, and you could hear them playing over
Maybe.
his
Okay.
room.
I buy all that stuff. You're pulling a Frank here. This is good.
Well, I just find that theory interesting because that's not one that I had about the cupboard, that everything in the cupboard is something that George put in there. So it has a life of its own, which is kind of similar to a kid's imagination, like we create whole worlds in our minds. They just grow and grow and grow and feed on each other as a kid's imagination begins to work. So
But what's strange is that it really is a closet. His clothes are hanging up there. So they go in there daily to dress him and things. So they're constantly opening it.
Which I thought that was weird too. When I saw the clothes, I'm like, well, wait, his clothes are there.
No, I was thinking because I thought I saw a Lego box in the cupboard or something in front of the dollhouse when they open it, and I was like, what if they had landed in the Lego box? Would they be Legos?
That would have been a fun episode. A whole different feel.
We'd have a little Lego movie segment in there.
Everything is awesome.
Amy and Rory get stuck in an Imaginext bat cave or something.
But that song reminded me a lot of Buffy, the episode Hush with the gentleman. I don't know if you guys have watched Buffy. That's one thing I always.
Is that the one where everyone's silenced and they have to write everything down?
So they have the skeleton kind of people, and Buffy has a clairvoyant dream about a girl singing with a little box saying that the gentlemen are coming. They need 7. They might take yours. You can scream, but no one will hear you. So it tells you what's going on. And I thought this was going to be a little bit more, but you didn't understand really what they're saying. It's just that feeling of eeriness. So the words weren't as important as that.
If they landed in the Lego box, it would have been everything is awesome.
Exactly.
Played in a minor key and slower.
Everything is awesome.
Oh yeah, the music cue for all of the creepy kids always reminds me of Ring Around the Rosie, but it doesn't resolve. The last note never comes.
Right.
So in my head, I'm always wanting it to continue, but it doesn't end. So yeah, that's a nice cue that they play throughout with the creepy kids.
Do you guys remember watching this episode for the first time, and do you remember figuring out that they were in a dollhouse just in this first part?
No, I'm glad.
I don't remember my first watch.
It's afterwards, I think.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's here because of the painted clock. That's when I remembered it. I was like, oh, they're in a toy.
It seems so obvious now, but I remember not getting it the first time.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't get it at first.
I think I probably figured out around the same time when the wooden frying pan and then the lantern that looked really familiar to me. So I was like, I know what that lantern is, but they're usually really small. And then I was like, oh, and then
that's what I should have
and the light
done,
literally went off.
Right.
I'm glad you said that, Heather, because I remember not getting it as well. I think maybe I might have got there in the dollhouse, but I didn't connect where they're at to the dollhouse in the cupboard. I feel like that it's shot. It's not, for me, it's not shot or edited well enough for me to associate the dollhouse in the cupboard with where everyone is being sent. I agree.
I don't think it was meant to be. I think we weren't. I think one more clue, it would have felt too obvious.
Yeah, and I think they intentionally tried to throw you off too, because the second they got in there, I think it was Rory, or no, I think it was Amy actually, runs into pots and pans, and they make actual metal pot and pan sounds. And then from that point on, they pick up the wooden pan and oh, this is stupid. Right. What's this? So I think they tried to throw you off at the beginning.
But also, the room that they're in looked like a regular room. So, as somebody who's played with a lot of dollhouses, they don't make them that detailed, unless it's a fake, wallpaper or something like that, right? And so that's what threw me off, thinking that they were somewhere else. Because even if they were in a dollhouse, it would have been just a flush wall.
Yep.
Because it feels like a lot of it is kind of stagey, but then they throw in some locations that, look like a big room and not so much like a dollhouse as they go. Because it all feels real stagey, when things shake, when the lights are going behind the closet, it feels very theatrical, soundstage. Yes. And the one large room that the doctor and Alex find themselves in feels like a real room. Yep. But yeah.
You could always fake hallways.
Yeah. Well, and do dollhouses have that many hallways?
No. Monica.
They don't even have hallways?
Well, let's go to our dollhouse expert. That's Monica from Temple of Geek.
There are no hallways in dollhouses.
Can you imagine trying to make a doll walk through a tiny little hallway? You couldn't even fit your hand in
my arm in there. Yeah.
So it's a
they don't work that way.
All right, I can't suspend my disbelief anymore, Doctor Who.
But I think if they had a Playmobil set, that might have some hull.
Yeah, there you go.
Also, in Are You Afraid of the Dark? You ever see that show?
Yep, I
There's
love that
a Dollhouse episode.
And in the Twilight Zone, there was a Dollhouse episode.
I was going to say, I did read on IMDb that originally Gaddis had set this all in a hotel, but it had to get changed to
because
dollhouse.
Because they moved that idea to a different episode. We'll get there.
Yeah, because like dollhouses are always like one-sided. Like one side has the back of the house, or if you have
Yep.
like the really nice ones that open up, right? Then you have them. But even when they would close, the two rooms would touch each other without a wall or anything.
Yeah, they don't connect like a normal house. But it also could be the perception filter. So that's not a
Yeah.
real hallway.
And it's all George's psychic
it's in his mind.
abilities. Yeah.
Eugene.
It's what George thought that the dollhouse was.
Yeah.
But thank you for mentioning the hotel, Kelsey. That also makes the twins make a little more sense because it's more paying homage to like a Shining.
Oh yeah,
Right.
that does connect.
Stay with us, Danny.
Where did the soldier one come from?
Oh yeah, he just pops up, doesn't he?
Oh. I
Yeah,
think
we
it's just
don't-
they're all coming out of the
We don't
woodwork.
see all the other
This
This
people.
could be a very old dollhouse.
Literally
Yeah.
woodwork.
Sorry.
Coming out of the woodwork.
Oh, that's great.
Is it?
I mean, it doesn't take much for me. That's all I gotta say.
That's why you're on the show.
Someone's gotta laugh at your dumb joke.
Hey, I'm not here for laughs. I'm here for a reaction, whether it's a groan or a moan.
Ugh.
There you go.
There.
There you go.
You covered all bases. I can edit that now into every. The doctor goes to make tea and tells Alex that whatever is inside that cupboard is so powerful it amplified George's fears, allowing them to travel through time and space, which brought the doctor here. They decide to open the cupboard, but only find clothes, old toys, and a dollhouse. It's all normal. The doctor gets the scrapbook and shows Alex the pictures of Claire a month before George was supposedly born. She is not pregnant. Alex remembers that Claire can't have children. They tried everything, but to no avail. Where did George come from? The doctor asks George who he is. The room begins to rumble, and the cupboard opens with a bright light, pulling both the doctor and Alex inside as George pleads again to save him from the monsters.
Talk about it now, Monica.
So there's like so much to talk about in these scenes though, because a lot is happening in these scenes.
Yeah.
Like there's one part where this is like one of the things that I hate about Matt Smith. Like he can be so playful and so fun to watch on screen and you just love it, but then you look at what he actually did and there's that scene where they're going back and forth. Should we open the cupboard? Should we not open the cupboard? What should we do? And Alex is like so freaked out, right? Like, you know, all this information is coming in. He's trying to process it. The doctor kind of knows what's going on and he's just playing Alex back and forth. And Alex, I don't know who's the name of the actor, but he's really good. Like, and he's looking terrified and freaked out. And at one point, the doctor says, "No, we can't open." He goes, "Of course not. We can't open it." And then he's like, "Yes, we can." And he's just playing this man who's, for the doctor's like, no big deal. He can make it a joke. He can be funny. But this man is under a lot of stress. It's his son he's worried about, and he looks like he's about to burst into tears any second. And Matt Smith's just like, "Oh no, whatever. Let's go open it." After freaking him out, you know what I mean? And I just feel like this is so common with the 11th Doctor, is he does this to everybody. So it always looks all happy on one side, but if you really look at what he's doing to people, like he's really messing them up.
Yeah, and George was played by Daniel Mays.
Well, he's really
Alex.
good.
Alex is Daniel Mays.
Alex is Daniel Mays.
Yeah, Alex.
Oh, sorry.
I do agree like that. We have to remember that this is Alex's son. For the doctor, this is a mystery. So I agree that like the doctor should have a little more empathy for what Alex is going through.
Bedside manner.
Better bedside
Well, I think
manner.
that goes into what I was saying earlier about his tunnel vision. Like, as soon as he gets hooked onto a mystery, everything else just sort of like it plays second fiddle to that.
Yeah, because the way I took that is the doctor is having a conversation with himself.
Yeah,
Alex
me
just
too.
happens to be there.
Right.
And then it has the unintended consequences that you mentioned, Monica.
The
Well, I
out
think
loud
it's-
inner monologue.
Yeah.
I think it's very Sherlock, and granted, I know Mark Gatiss wrote this, but Sherlock works that way a lot,
Mhm.
where he just doesn't have that empathy for people, and he's like
Yeah.
that sociopath that just can't understand when people are freaking out. And
Yeah.
so in this episode, like 11 is very much that, where, you know, with George, he's very kind, but with like Alex is not the same
Yeah.
kind of like like, we'll get through this, don't worry, I believe you. He's just kind of almost using him as like a sound box, right? Like just kind of like bouncing ideas off of him. But Alex is in actual stress, and he does that with a lot of his companions too. When they're freaking out or they're worried, he's just like, they're just kind of there as like, like a soundboard, somebody to just kind of like bounce ideas off of, but he's not really looking at like the damage that like he's causing. And Rory brings this point up in the God complex in a couple episodes down, about kind of the danger he is to people. And
Right.
It's kind of like he really cares, and he cares about people's emotions, but he can't recognize people's emotions because Alex is freaking the hell out the whole episode, and he barely bats an eye. And same thing with Rory and Amy a lot of the times. And just like you said, the more upset someone gets, the calmer he gets, and that's very interesting to watch. But at the same time, it's
unless you're a kid, then he's really
unless you're a kid.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, it's very interesting as an audience member to watch.
Yeah.
But I find it to be cool that it's that consistent through his character, that like he just almost like he can't read the social cues of someone being in emotional distress.
Yeah, I kind of saw it like if you took Alex completely out of the scene, it was just like, I think it was Eugene was saying, where the doctor is literally just talking to himself. Like it didn't matter if anyone was there. And it's almost just like when like what was it, this last season, when Jodie's in the Matrix after she sees Ruth, starts talking to herself before trying to overload everything to get out from the master. It was just like just the whole inner dialogue, just saying it out loud, because that's what the doctor does.
When I was, I went to San Diego Comic-Con, I think this was in 2018. Yeah, in 2018, and Stephen Moffat was doing a panel for the Sherlock comic books. And so I sat in on that, and he talks about how Sherlock only works on screen because if you actually met somebody like him in person, you'd probably punch him. And I think that kind of goes to where, like, if Eleven was like so excited about a mystery in front of me as I'm worried about my child, I probably would have punched him.
Yeah.
Which is why Claire had to go to work.
Yes.
My gosh, though, could you imagine if it was switched and it was Claire being like, I wasn't pregnant, I didn't have a child, I can't have kids, I can't remember this, what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, that had been wow.
Well, this brings me to what we were talking about earlier, how they could have maybe seeded the fact that Claire and Alex have tried having kids. I don't know how they could have done it, but to me it sort of comes out of nowhere, and which is a problem I have with this episode.
And Eugene, I argued with you the last episode about, which I can't even remember what it was, about how more seating would have been great. Oh wait, no, the episode with Rivers, Melody.
Let's Kill Hitler.
Yeah, I agreed with you that more seating definitely needed to happen. But with this episode, I loved that I didn't see it coming, and it was a pleasant surprise rather than a whoa back the truck up surprise.
I think being a horror film feel to it, they wanted that twist.
Yes, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because they had when they show Alex with the photos, I'm like, they could have done something there.
Maybe even just like put the date on there. Was the date on there?
Just something. But I do understand like the reveal, and that's what they were going for. But then there's something that happens later that if you give me one of these reveals that comes out of nowhere, I can accept it. But then there's something else that happens later that I'm like, you could have done one, but not the other. And this is the one that I feel like they could have. This is the one I would have not have had as much as of a reveal as I hate not I hate not being able to talk without giving too much away, but I'll bring it up later.
To that point.
Yeah, going on that, because I can't speak fully about it because part of it's later also, but one thing I think the reveals are doing, at least specifically with this episode, also being it's written by Gaddis, and we were also talking about Sherlock, is a lot of it was information that only the doctor had seen. So we only know what the doctor knows, and maybe slightly a little more because we saw the exchange of like Amy and Rory and the old woman. We know why they're there, but as far as what George is, we only know what the doctor knows, and then there's more that comes that he puts it all together based on like remembering things, just like a Sherlock episode. But yeah. Sometimes it's like, oh, it's just another Sherlock thing again. And then sometimes it's like really well done. And I noticed that they did, the first time I noticed they did that style was in the 11th Hour, when he was like going back and like tracking steps and it's showing like different things and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. I can get used to this.
So Nate, yes, we do sort of know what the Doctor knows, but also we don't, because the Doctor has knowledge of other species, and that where sort of my problem comes with this episode.
Gotcha.
So Monica mentioned that quote, and then I like how it's a great quote with the Doctor, and then it turns it funny. Alex goes, "You're not from social services, are you?"
Yeah. And that's the thing. 11 has some of the best lines of any Doctor, in my opinion. Like,
but they're all for nothing.
Stop with that. This one wasn't for nothing.
Stonehenge was
worked.
a setup. Azkaban, the Leaf defeated him. Demon's Run, it was a setup.
You guys, we can do a whole episode on just 11's lines.
Oh, don't tell me Demon's Run was a setup. No,
it was.
No.
It was.
I know it was. No, it totally was. Just don't tell me.
I'm saying.
My last thing on this is on this part would be like the part where they're talking about like, George, what are you? And George, the parents, like, they get him in the habit. Everything he fears goes in the cupboard. And from the moment that they figure out what he is and question what he is, the cupboard comes to life and takes them in, because I think they are what he fears now.
They are the
because
monster.
he fears rejection or being alone.
Right, and if they find out who he is, then they won't want it. Like the parents won't want him, and that's what scares him. So.
Yeah.
And it's all subconscious. He doesn't know what he is.
Well, he can't control it either, because he wants them to save him from them, but he can't stop it from taking them.
Yeah, you don't confront an alien being that is doing this, what are you, without knowing that it's going to scare that kid. But I did like the shot when they shot it so that the cupboard was so close to the bed. They had moved it closer. And
that struck me as well. That seemed very wrong,
I loved it. It had but it just had such an envelopment feeling, that it will grab them, that they had no chance to get away from it. I like that look.
So that set, that bedroom, is that a real location, or was that a stage? Did they have to move the cupboard forward to put lights behind it?
I think that's a stage. Yeah,
because all it was 4 walls. There's no reason.
Yeah,
all the lighting effects and all that stuff. There's
but
no
why?
reason
Yeah, but then why move the? Yeah,
because of the mood.
Yeah, to make it closer.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if it just opened and then fell and like swallowed them?
Ooh.
No, just me. Okay.
And
because the landlord went down. Yeah, the landlord went down into the carpet or whatever it was.
When you think about what must actually be happening on set for them to capture the images of them like flying around and getting sucked into this closet with strobe lights going, like I love stuff like that because it's practical and it's all in the performance. But for us, it feels like, to me, it felt so real that they were getting sucked into this closet, and that's the kind of stuff I love, because it wasn't CG, it wasn't big effects. It was simple stuff that sold the emotion to me.
Right.
And I like that scene because it reminded me of Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very much.
I'm with Heather. She's over there like, nope. Me too, girl. Me too.
I don't do Poltergeist, okay?
That is the greatest movie.
Same.
Poltergeist.
Do you want to, remember the whole melting baby conversation? I have a problem with people getting sucked into televisions. Okay.
So Idiot's Lantern was not for you.
Right.
No, but luckily the effects were so bad that I tempered it down a little bit.
I would always get nervous whenever I saw static on a TV, and I probably would if we ever saw static on a TV anymore. But I don't know. I sometimes when I get really, really scared, it's like fun.
Yeah,
it's like I love it.
Well, that's why horror exists. So
but
Doctor Who is the scariest I can get. Like,
really,
that's the scariest I can go.
I don't like horror. I don't like the blood, guts, slasher horror type of thing. Suspense.
Well, that's different. That's different.
Suspense, yeah.
In this, so I think this is more along that lines for me, and Poltergeist was more along that lines, where it was more suspense, not as much gore or horror.
That's true. I think The Exorcist was worse.
This is what horror movies used to be considered, and then they used horror elements in those gore movies, and then that became popular, and they call that horror movies. But stuff like this is really more what horror movies actually are, and the other is,
We should call them gore movies.
Slasher, yeah. Oh, there you go. Coin of
Well, there's
phrase.
subgenres which we won't get into, and it's just devolved and devolved.
Yeah.
If anybody's
But it-
listening to this and I see gore blow up, I'm real ticked off. Okay.
Static. No.
I keep
Should we
thinking
move on?
this woman's name is Mrs. Rotisserie, and I want chicken so bad.
Well, you'll be a poultrygeist.
Oh.
I don't get it.
Now you could leave.
Mrs. Rossiter is in another area of the darkened house and also being followed by a creature in the shadows. Amy and Rory get closer to the sound of the laughter behind a door and open it. There is a human-sized, old-time doll with a wooden head standing there. They dismiss it and continue their search, being watched by the doll. In his apartment, Mr. Purcell begins sinking into the floor and disappears. He is now in the house, running from the human-sized dolls. He runs into Rory and Amy as one of the dolls captures him and transforms him into one of them. All the dolls now chase Rory and Amy, just wanting to play. Amy and Rory trap themselves in the library with the dolls just outside. With nowhere to go, they decide to rush to the door and make a run for it. Rory grabs a mop to keep the dolls away, but one captures Amy and turns her into a wooden-headed doll.
The Mr. Purcell disappearing. When I first watched that, I was very impressed at how that looked. And then now watching it on the Doctor Who Confidential, they took the actor into a soundstage and they had a hydraulic lift, and then he lowered into a vat of green goo.
Oh, like a green
So I was
screen.
like, that's amazing that they came up with that. There's a diver underneath there, and they had to come up with the right consistency to have it green, but also not too slippery. So it was really well done. And now that I know how they did it, I'm like, that's why it looks good.
Yeah, for the face part, when we were watching it just before for this, I was actually thinking, I didn't know how they did it, but I was actually thinking about that. I thought it was like green water or something. It's like, oh, maybe you could do it with like a non-transparent, like green water. So like as he goes through, it just does it. And oh, I guess that is what they did.
You're pretty on the money on that one.
So they just brought him to a Nickelodeon game show set.
Right.
Slime.
Okay, we would need
I
a
always wanted
TARDIS
to
for
be
that.
slimed.
Well, you just have to say, I don't know.
Well, we're in
Deep
Purcell's
cut,
room.
Eugene.
Yeah, the set, like the background of his room was pretty crazy. I don't know if anyone else looked around. There's like liquor in the middle, and then
Yeah.
he had
There's a little ceramic wagon thing. I
yeah.
saw that.
He had like empty pizza boxes in one corner, and then on the sofa there was like a camera with a flash. So
Yeah.
they were definitely painting some weird picture of what this guy does in his off time.
Well,
I noticed it was very spacious. He has like the best apartment in the complex, clearly.
His furniture really looks hand-me-down too. Like that was totally either someone died in that apartment and he just took it over, or it's his like hand-me-down, grandparents' furniture.
It's collection from all the apartments as
Yeah,
residents
I bet you
die.
that's what
He
it
just-
is.
Yeah.
I bet you that's what it is. People he's evicted.
People he evicted, yeah, he just acquired their stuff.
But to go on with Alburn, what you're saying, building this weird picture of his character, that he mentions like watching TV and flipping channels, and he goes, "Looks like we're gonna watch that movie again." I'm like, "What movie's that?"
Movie.
I know.
I
I was thinking the same thing.
I'm
Poltergeist.
scared. I'm scared
don't
that
wanna
it's some
know.
weird home movie that he made.
Well, he didn't seem too thrilled.
Like a
about
snuff
it.
film?
Probably not.
Oh, oh, but his dog was cute.
His dog was
Ugly.
better in this scene.
His dog was hardly bothered when he disappeared through the floor.
Yeah, he really
was
wasn't.
kind
He
of
was
like,
like,
oh,
good riddance."
finally.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
always a good indicator of the person, right? How
Yeah.
their pet responds to things.
Really, because up until this part, I was thinking, wow, this guy is so great. I'm so glad the dog cleared that up.
This is another part where I think you had to get on with the plot and give up the character, because Amy and Rory would not just leave the dummy standing there. At the very least, they would close the door again,
Oh, the original time they saw
Oh.
The
it.
original time, they open it up and it's like the kid's laughing stops and they just see the
Right, yeah.
dummy traveling with the doctor. They wouldn't just
Right.
accept it as, wow, there's a human-sized doll there. Let's just ignore it and leave the door open and walk away.
Well, I like that there's random items among this dollhouse because that is very true to, kids playing with dollhouse. You do put random items in there, like the thing of thread that we see later, or maybe in this scene they block the door with the big thread.
Spool.
Spool,
And
yeah.
yes, thank you. The spool of thread. I'm not a sewer. Spool of thread, and then the eyeball. The one thing that nitpicky note that bothers me, the mop that Rory grabs. what tiny mop exist? I've never seen a mop as an accessory to anything.
No, like Barbie shoes or like, a purse or something, but like, yeah.
The end of the mop should have been solid. Not
Yeah.
That would have been
then
funny.
that would have
Yes.
been working.
Well, the first rule of comedy is everything's funnier in threes. The second rule of comedy is you can't go wrong with a mop.
Okay.
Well, to I guess nerd out a little bit on that, I have action figures with accessories that are mops and brooms, but like Frank said, they're solid. They're not actual.
Oh, I was gonna be like, liar, go get them. Now that I know they're solid, I'm not interested in.
No, they're not here.
They made an action figure of the cleaning woman from Ghostbusters. Is that what you have?
No, they
No,
made a
it's-
Spike Spiegel
Like
mop.
Toxic Avengers, right?
Toxic Avenger, yeah.
I don't think that kid had any of those.
Well, they use
But-
their brooms for other purposes. But
But maybe he
Right,
was scared
yeah.
of chores, so he put the mop. He didn't want to mop the bathroom
Oh.
into the
It wasn't
closet.
a toy mop. It was an action.
It probably made a weird sound when somebody was mopping.
or in the shadow, it looked like a person standing there.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, figured it out.
But why were they turning into dolls? Like,
The psychic energy was sort of becoming a mind of its own and twisting the logic of things.
yeah.
And
Like-
this-
like,
this
be,
became-
like, kind of like be one of us, just sort of like,
Right, right.
like almost like a single-celled organism, just kind of like like an Absorbolov, just
Oh,
taking
no.
it all inside and turning all of the foreign elements into something like itself.
Well, they
They
just
were-
wanted
they
to
were-
play, and it's hard to
yeah.
play tag and things with only one person. So
It was taking-
they wanted
it was
more
taking-
people to play with.
It was taking the monsters and turning the monsters into something a child would play with. But they're not, it's not human, so it doesn't realize that it's creating absolutely terrifying toys.
Or George is an introvert and doesn't want to go with everybody and play, so that scared him. And so having more and more people coming in wanting to play with you.
Yeah. And it definitely was creepy.
And
Well,
again, Rory and Amy just running out trying to get past them.
Oh, and then she turns into a doll. Oh, that was so cool,
Yeah.
the way she
Yeah,
turned
but-
into a doll.
It just seems so on them.
She
It
got
seemed on
caught
them.
really easily.
Yeah.
She got
Yeah,
caught
she
really
did.
easy, and then Rory ran. Like, it didn't seem like that big of a deal that happened to her. So many other occurrences where Amy seemed like she may have died or been taken. Like, it was horrific, and that was just sort of brushing over.
Rory's already been a doll. He knows it's not that bad.
That's true.
I like the transformation. I like that. It just seemed the story needed a little bit more of why they decided right then. It's like they could have left when the dolls outside, Shadow left, but they stayed until the dolls came back and then said, now we open the door.
Mark Gaddis, has been writing for a different show. Like, it definitely feels like the characters aren't quite right for what we know of them, particularly Rory and Amy. I felt Rory has acted out of character this entire episode. Even earlier when Amy discovers that the pot is actually wooden, Rory says that's stupid. But like, that's not something that I would imagine Rory saying, because he was more inquisitive. And then here, yeah, when they're like, what can we do? And Amy wants to just make a run for it, mad dash. Like,
Yeah.
that's not quite
Yeah.
It's very,
what I
it's
know
very
of their
simplistic
characters.
thinking.
Yeah. So it is very plot. Like, well, we have to make
Yeah.
Amy a doll, so they have to leave. And
Yeah.
that's hard to buy.
And this again
Well-
goes to style over substance. They're sacrificing the substance for the motif or the style of horror.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right, but for something as simple as this pot is stupid, like he could have just said like, that seems like a bad idea or an accident waiting to happen, or
Right.
Right.
that's
right.
wackadoo. That's what he
Yeah.
should have said.
Radical.
You can't go to that well too often.
Again, if anybody's listening, I am available for ghostwriting.
Yowzas.
Yowzas, that's wackadoo.
Oh, we got a new T-shirt. Yeah, that's wackadoo. That's better than timey-wimey.
Is it?
No.
The doctor and Alex realize that they are inside the dollhouse in the back of George's cupboard. Alex asks the doctor how he could have forgotten that Claire could not have children, and what is George? A perception filter altered their memories so they would accept George as their son. He is a Tenza, a being born in space that can feel what their hosts want, in this case, a child, and assimilates to that desire. But something triggered this cycle of fear in his unconscious. Suddenly, a doll finds them and they run, carrying large safety scissors to keep the doll away. The doctor yells for George to face his fears and open the cupboard. They run into Rory, who is followed by Doll Amy and the others.
So this perception filter is becoming to be a bit of a
Deus Ex Machina?
yes. I enjoy the concept of it, but it's a very easy go-to. And then this is where I don't want to say it loses me, but it's just all this, oh yeah, and he's an alien, and this is all happening because he's an alien, and you didn't really have kids and all stuff like this, so now you got to make him believe in fairies, and then we'll all be okay. Real quick.
And this is where my criticisms is coming from. Like, if they had seeded some of these things earlier, I would have been able to buy this reveal a little better. And it's coming from repeated watchings. Like, the first time I watched it, it's great. And then you watch it again, and you're like, oh wait, this doesn't exactly, like, the pegs don't connect into the square hole, or
But and even if, like, I think whoever was saying what was earlier was right about the photographs are very prevalent, but that seems to be the only thing they're using to plant that seed. They could have done a couple other things possibly to and have it mean something else in that moment, and then you can and that's why that thing happened
like the
earlier.
spaceship he came in, like
something
Superman
like
or something, right?
Just something that wouldn't have tipped off the plot, that plot device, but would have just sort of brought us into the story and be a mislead. Like the doctor says, oh, there's that thing because of this, well, what does that mean? And then it brings us somewhere else, so our brain just goes to, like, well, that's the reason we saw that. And then when it loops around, like Eugene's saying, it ends up being like a kind of like a complete thing. I almost feel like there's a few episodes, and again, I'm usually the person who defends a lot of these episodes because I enjoy them so much, but I think there's a number of episodes that have a great idea and they just loosely tie things together, and all they need to do is just tie it a little tighter to make it, like, really solid.
I have one change that I think would have tied it all together. We renamed the alien race from Tenza to Fiveza. And then it's all in the beginning. From the very first click of the light, we seeded it 5 times. Yeah, see? And then
so
the
what
second
was
time you
with
watch,
us? Why
you
did
would
it
have
have
been
to be 5 times?
Yeah.
I thought you were making
kind of 5 light bulbs going off.
No, I'm serious. I think that would have tied it all.
Because I keep going on to the photos, because that's what Josh mentioned, that's the only thing they're using. So I'm like, could you have done something in those photos?
Yeah, like you could, like Monica said, even if we see that spaceship in the beginning, and to Auburn's point, if it was flashing 5 times, and we wouldn't have had any reference for that yet. Just something to kind of like close that.
Or because you could even put a perception filter on his spaceship or whatever, right?
Right.
Like, oh, it's the lamp, or it's this,
cupboard.
or it's whatever. It's the cupboard.
It's the cupboard, yeah.
The light should go off 10 times, not 5 times. That would have fixed that the other way.
10 is too many. That's why it's easier just to change the name. Yeah.
They're just
10 times. Oh my goodness.
Not 100% sure I want to open this can of worms, but what if George was one of the almost people? Because then we would have seen him before. The gangers.
Yeah. Oh. No, that would have been very Moffat-y.
But the reason I say that is not because I want it or whatever, but the sentiment at the end of this episode was the same as the sentiment at the end of that episode, where they're still people, we can still live among them.
Right.
It was the same thing. So when he said that, like, he's still your child, it made me think of that episode.
Jim. It's a ganger Jim and his
Adam?
kid. That's right, Adam.
There's a lot of child parent elements in this season, even down to River and and her, Rory and Amy being her parents, and other things that I'm sure you guys are thinking of that I can't recall. But there's like what we were just talking about, and this, and then the baby. There's a lot of that going through this season. I wonder if maybe that's why it's a recurring thing, like that was a plan.
Yeah, we're a bunch of writers having kids.
Yeah,
I think that's a recurring thing in Doctor Who in general. Like Bill Potts' season, Bill was always talking about her mom that she never got to meet. The episode of where all the people are, like, where the tree and the bugs.
Knock knock.
Knock knock. There we go. That one is very parent oriented.
And we do have to remember, this is a show that is geared towards children at the base level, right? Like, that is where it starts.
Yeah.
George hears the doctor, opens the door, and is sucked into the house. The doctor tells him that he created this world and only he can stop it, but George doesn't believe him. The doctor remembers the first thing George said to him when they met. "Are you here to take me away?" George's subconscious picked up on his parents' worry and possibility of rejecting him. Tenza only wants to be accepted, and the fear of being rejected was manifesting as the monsters. The dolls surround George as he yells for his father. Alex runs to him and picks him up, protecting him from the dolls. He promises that they will never send George away no matter what. He is their son. The dolls change back into humans and return to where they were taken. Mrs. Rossiter among the garbage bags, Mr. Purcell on the floor of his apartment, and Amy and Rory in the lift. George, Alex, and the doctor return to George's bedroom.
I love this moment with Amy and Rory as they walk out. Amy goes, "Was I?" Or Rory's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
The part that kind of tripped me up here was but the boy's acting. I thought he was excited to be taken away. Like I was confused in that moment. Like
he's not a great actor.
Yeah, I was interpreting
Spielberg
it that
didn't
way,
cast
so.
that kid, but he's cute. So
he's cute, and I think he was so he had such an energy to him. I think it was well cast.
You know, at first you think he's like a little obsessive compulsive, maybe on a spectrum or something, but after you realize what he is, maybe he just doesn't fully understand human emotions or how to convey things. Because I didn't really see when he's like, "Are you here to take me away?" I didn't see it as any emotion at all, just him blandly saying it. Like he didn't know how to say it. He's just saying the words but not expressing it.
Right. I think that's how I was taking it. But then when the whole episode revealed itself to be about George's fear of being taken away, did they play that moment earlier like you're saying? Or was it just that's the best the kid could do?
Or maybe they did that so that you could go either way on it.
Right.
Yeah, because when at the very end, I mean, this is kind of skipping. At the very end, he seems to have emotion. Like when they're all like everything's said and done, and they're like, "Oh, everything's good." He's like, "Yeah," or you know, he's sitting there all joyful.
They probably had him do it like 10 times, and they chose the most ambiguous one.
Probably, but I didn't remember when I first saw the episode. I remembered what happened like at the end overall, but I don't remember it being as emotional as it was with the father saying like, you know, "You're my son, I love you, I'll accept you," and like them crying, and I'm just like, oh, this is a lot more emotional than I remembered it being.
I think because that happens to me a lot too, is on second, third, whatever viewing, once we already know what's basically what happens, we start to watch it on a subtext level, and we're not sitting there like, well, who's this and what's that and what's going on. We are now reacting more to the emotional content. That happens to me all the time while we're doing this podcast and I'm rewatching stuff, and I would say 9 out of 10 times when I go to watch a show, I'm like, oh, this one, I end up liking it more. It ends up being one I really like because I'm actually I think the geek in me gets disappointed in some things, and then when I rewatch it, I'm just kind of letting the emotional content wash over me.
Human in you.
That's right.
Appreciates.
I only have one heart, and I end up crying.
Alex said at the beginning that George doesn't cry, and then George cried in his arms. It's like George has let go a lot of that and has now fully become their son. It seems like he was always part of the Tenza beforehand, not knowing where he's fitting, trying to become what they want.
Right.
Yeah,
now it's like, he is now their kid.
Yeah, this area is one part of this episode that I always remember because it does hit the emotional beats for me. Alex says, it sounds like he's going to say, "You're not my son," but he says, "You're human," and I thought that was great. And then
like Alex's hang up in that moment is never that like this is not my son. It's that it's an alien. So how can I love it? But I just like that it was never he's not our son, and he's able to run to George at the moment and be like, "You are our son. We will never get rid of you, or we're never gonna like send you away," or whatever that George is, or it's revealed that that's George's like main fear, that he's gonna be sent away.
And also was instinct on Alex's part, right? The minute he says "Dad" is when he runs.
Yeah.
But I really like this episode too. I just feel that the moment of explanation of the fantasy of it was just like shot out of a cannon so fast that I felt like we could have had a little bit more.
Yeah, that's where I agree with you, and that's where my criticisms are coming from.
But I don't think it didn't take away the feeling of the show. I was crying at the end when he ran to him and stuff like that. But so I really like this episode. I just felt like they just put so much thought into so much that there's just these big, when you make a right hand turn, you kind of want people to know where you're going. And
Eugene, now I understand what you're saying about the 2 points. I see them differently. The first point, not knowing about George, I liked a lot. This point, I agree, it went too fast because of what you guys are even talking about with spaceships never entered my mind. The way I saw Tensas was that they're all born a lot and they travel in space. They don't have spaceships. They're more non-corporeal.
True.
Like fear her.
I imagine that too, but I really like Monica's just the concept of the idea of
Yeah.
like just something maybe
The
it was
egg
stars.
he hatched in. I don't know.
Maybe there
Right,
were
yeah.
stars that blinked 5 times, whatever it may have been. Just
It's an alien. That's all you
Well-
needed to know. But then they said a little bit too much, which had all of our minds going different ways. Because
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are Tensa's a horse? Are Tensa's a loved one that died that now is alive again? Is Tensa your mate that you never found who just grows up to be as automatically an adult? They fill whatever you need.
So it's not necessarily like a child that
They
needs
needed
a
a child.
home.
They really wanted a child, so it became a child.
Wait, I got it. You know what Tenzas are? Tenzas are the shooting stars that you wish on.
Yes.
there you go.
Love it. Love
That's
it.
so
Wow.
If they would have said that in that moment, I would have been okay with
But
it.
what if all I really need is a
Because
color
they
printer?
did kind of, but it all came too quickly to give some kind of wrap up.
Yeah. And
it was
so
a
we can
printer.
move on to it.
Like you guys have mentioned before, it's meant for children at the base, right?
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
you don't need a lot. Kids will be like, "Oh, okay."
This is one of my favorite shows, and I watched so many. I'm like, what's happening here again? I don't remember what happens, and I enjoy it more as a result on
Maybe
repeated
we need a
viewing.
child consultant.
We'll get social services.
What do you
here.
think, Junior?
Oh my gosh, sometimes I need that from my son, or sometimes, just because there are episodes that I'll watch and I'm just like, whoa, that was horrible. Like, I did not enjoy the episode. And my kid's like, that was the best thing ever. I'm like, what did you watch?
We had that a lot where like I feel like my son and I, my youngest, my 8-year-old and I like always loved the same episodes. We're like, oh, that's so great. And Nate's like, what are you talking about? That was a terrible episode.
And so, like all my criticisms before, this is when I had praised that it still holds the impact after several viewings. So I like that is still the case in this point.
I also think the actor who plays the father, he's such conviction in his stress, because he didn't seem like a father who was angry or didn't care. He felt like a father who was in anguish and despair over what was happening, even before the whole plot was unveiled to him. So by the time to see this person who was in despair from frame 1 feel happy at the end, I think that's part of the emotional
For
catharsis
sure.
as well.
And I was just gonna say, like, as a parent, I feel like Alex's acting was everything you internalize or what you're thinking in your head, because as a parent you're always freaked out in your head, like, and probably having all the same thoughts, but you're like keeping it together, but you see that translate in the way he's just stressed the whole episode.
He is,
According
and
to
he's-
IMDb, the actor was drawn to this script because he is a father himself.
But yeah, I felt like he was at his wit's end for the whole episode. Like, he's trying to figure out what to do with the kid with his son, and he doesn't know what to do. And then it seemed like, not fully, but there might be like potential like marital stress because they don't know what to do and they don't agree and so forth. And then just like the level of worry and the glossiness in his eyes when the dude's asking him for his rent. And they're trying to figure, he's trying to, like, they're past due, and just he's got all this stuff piling up, and he's just trying to figure out how he's going to take care of his family, and it's just building on top of him.
This is a great episode for you guys to be on. I really appreciate this perspective.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. It's a good episode overall. Like,
Well, it's weird
Yeah.
because when we were talking about you guys coming on, we were like, oh, they're coming on for that episode.
That's what I thought.
But
No,
I think
no,
this
not that
turned
one.
out well. I think it turned out very well.
Tick tock goes the clock.
Oh, right.
Okay, that's like the Freddy Krueger song. That's what I kept
Thank
thinking.
you.
Yes.
Which is another one of those things that followed me through my life.
Well, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Yeah, that's enough.
3, 4, lock the door.
Excuse me, I have to go lock the door.
tie your
Yeah.
shoe, girl, tie your shoe.
I'm so used to that version. I said to Frank last night, I can't remember the real version except 1, 2, buckle my shoe, and I was surprised I remembered that part.
5, 6, pick up sticks. I don't know what 3, 4 is.
Shut the door.
4, shut that door. Yeah.
Yeah.
5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8.
Lay them straight.
Don't be late.
That is
Ah.
don't be
Lay
late.
them
yeah.
straight.
I thought it was lay them straight. You pick
Yeah.
up the sticks and you
The
lay them
sticks and lay
straight.
them straight.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure this is all a metaphor for something dark in history, I'm sure.
9, 10, do it over again?
But isn't 910 a big fat hen?
Yeah, 910 is a big fat hen.
So what's that mean?
Maybe there's a censored version of the song that's less morbid.
910 big fat hen, 789. What?
That's the funeral dinner. The
But
hen.
this particular TikTok song, we don't hear all of the lyrics until the very end. So we'll go into that in the next paragraph, which
Even
is
for the doctor.
When this, I'm sorry, when you were talking about this TikTok song, is this the same one that plays when they capture River and then River kills the doctor? Because I feel
Yeah.
like they play this song like down the line as well, right?
I believe so, yes.
2 more episodes.
Okay.
I mean, in 2 different episodes.
So I looked it up. It's called 1-2 Buckle My Shoe. It's,
Oh, you beat me.
It's an English language nursery rhyme and counting out rhyme. It has no dark
Really?
meaning.
Well, what's the rest of it though?
1-2 Buckle My Shoe. 3-4 Knock at the door.
Knock at
Oh.
the door.
5-6 Pick up sticks. 7-8 Lay them straight. 9-10 A big fat hen. 11-12 Dig and delve. 13-14 Maids a courting. 15-16 Maids in the kitchen. 17-18 Maids in waiting. 19-20 My plate's empty.
never
Okay,
got
no
to-
one ever counts past
No,
10
no.
for a
I've never
reason.
heard the past 10, yeah.
Only thing that ever happened in a bucket when I was a kid was Liza with a hole.
Children back then had such a better vocabulary than even I do today.
Claire comes home from her night shift to a strange sight. Her son smiling and laughing with Alex and the doctor. They say that George is fine. She begins to question it, but stops and just accepts the happy news. The doctor leaves and asks Amy and Rory where they want to go next. The unobserved TARDIS screen shows the day and time of the doctor's death at Lake Silencio. I like that this is a kind of a callback to the lodger. When Claire comes in, the doctor greets her with a kiss, just like he did in the lodger.
That's right. That's right.
The European.
The only thing that slightly bugged me about this was that like George was still in his pajamas on the counter. Like this kid's got no other clothes. This is obviously
It's
later.
morning.
Oh my God, are you aware of children? My nephew's wear the same
Yeah, I
clothes for
guess.
3 days straight.
Right now
guess.
we're in quarantine and I don't know when my kids changed last.
Yeah, right.
That would be March.
So Matt Smith does a very deep reference in this scene. They're making kippers for breakfast, and kippers are a type of way you make fish. So kippers are fish. And when you see Matt Smith, he's walking through the kitchen. He's got the packet of kippers, and he's doing this through the air. You know, he's waving, and they're flying fish from Christmas Carol.
Wow.
Yeah,
Another deep
that was the best part of the episode for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask what kippers are because I don't know what kippers are.
So another deep cut is earlier in this episode when the doctor is with George. He mentions that 3 of his favorite bedtime stories as a child are The Three Little Centaurans, The Emperor Dalek's New Clothes, and Snow White and the 7 Keys to Doomsday. The 7 Keys to Doomsday is a Doctor Who stage play from 1974.
Really?
Wow.
Oh,
Look at that.
Wow.
Is it from the Doctor Who people?
It was officially sanctioned, but they had stage actors playing parts.
Yeah.
Sounds like Horcruxes or something.
Because this season was split into 2 parts. The first part with Lake Silencio, how it all started. And then we went a whole different tangent, found out about River. So the second half had that big break in time with 3 months and then starting over again. It's like you forget about Lake Silencio. You forgot about that. So bringing that back in now, oh, this is the story arc for the entire season. I forgot.
yeah. I thought it was interesting at the end of this episode when he's sitting there and they sit down outside the apartment complex with Amy and Rory. And it's like, it's glad to have us back, all in the flesh. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
what?
I noticed that too.
Wait, we were just had an episode about the flesh earlier.
Yep.
But it can end up being nothing. But I just thought that was rather
You can-
interesting wording.
That's a crack incident. You
Or
can't just,
was it nothing?
just
Was
throw
he-
these references around willy-nilly. It's
Or was
rude.
that a clue to something coming up? It could be.
I'm telling you, they've trained us to
Yeah.
be looking for this stuff and throw us off. And then later on, they're like, oh, yeah, humans always looking for patterns where they don't exist.
That's it, a new podcast, Doctor Who Conspiracy Theories.
Well, Kelsey, when we were watching it, noticed that the doctor really got out of there in a hurry, and Alex had a fun, like almost chasing after the doctor as he was halfway down the hallway just to get a little bit of reassurance that everything was going to be okay. But that was a really neat, like, final character moment with Alex and George both on the hallway there and both finally coming to that full acceptance of their future.
Yeah, because Alex mentions, is George going to grow like another head? And it reminded me of like Amy and Rory's concern of being pregnant. Is he
yeah.
going to grow, is my baby going to grow a time head?
Yeah, and then there's that part where he says he'll be whatever you want him to be. And I was like, what does that mean? So George never comes into his own? Like,
Oh my gosh,
he's
I thought
always
that
fitting the
too.
need?
But now I just think it's a Tenza thing. Yeah.
Yes. Well, for me, being George is the Tenza fulfilling, coming into its own. Like, because the Tenza race their whole thing is that they become whatever anyone needs them to be.
Gotcha.
So the Tenza as a person, as a Tenza
as a being,
and how lucky for Alex and Claire, like, because as parents, you know, parents put stuff on children, right? Like, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be happy, and like, but we are our own people. For Claire and Alex, like, their son is actually going to become whatever they want him to be. So if they want their son to be a lawyer, George will become a lawyer.
I take that further, you know, being in the social climate that we are now, that George can be whatever he wants to be as far as like, let's just say, sexual preference, because of what happened with the Supreme Court ruling. So that's how that kind of hit me during this second watch or third watch, whatever you want to say. So I like that you can kind of apply that to not only occupation, but you can kind of like love whoever you want to love.
And I had it where it wasn't an occupation, but it reminded me of, again, Star Trek. But there's an episode where a being will then become whatever their mate wants them.
Yeah, the perfect mate.
I'm sorry, what planet is this?
They're very rare, actually.
But she comes out of stasis too soon, and she deals with the captain, who unknowingly wants her to be independent, smart,
Don't come out of
self-aware.
stasis
You know,
too
so
soon.
she chooses to become that rather than what, you know, the other person wants her to be. You know, so that's how I saw it more. Your child can be compassionate, smart, a leader. What do you want the world to be? You know, it's like you have a lot of responsibility, fear and good both ways, going, he will be what you want, so don't worry about it. Just love him and he'll be loved, and that's what he'll be.
Like, I have a thought or question on that. What if they want grandchildren? Does he go out and have a relationship and have half Tenza human
There's
babies?
the vibes, huh?
Or does he, or is they, what do you call it, mitosis or whatever? Does he create grandchildren as part of the illusion, and they just all of a sudden just accept that they have grandchildren?
Right, like a cuckoo bird eventually leaves the nest and starts other cuckoo bird families, right? They don't become whatever bird
right
they put their eggs in with. So, yeah, George is going to grow up and be a Tenza. He's going to have to leave, right, to continue the Tenza race if this is how they, you know, how they spawn.
If they take that metaphor, you know, completely, yeah.
He'll have a big fat henza.
And that might be why puberty becomes an actual issue, but we won't ever see that.
No.
Yeah, you guys really thought about this.
That's why we're on a podcast.
Well, the doctor mentions it's like a cuckoo.
That's part of the problem I have with this episode, is that it goes by too quickly. Like, you're given that information.
No, episode's not quick.
No, a lot of what they say is quick, and we've had that problem with.
I know, I'm joking.
Because he did say, you know, even the comic lines, like, oh my gosh, the cupboard's bigger on the inside. Oh, that's a lot more common than you think. You know, that you might have caught, but then you didn't catch that he's trying to sonic the doll and it's like, oh, I got to do a setting for wood. I got to fix this because it doesn't work on wood. You know, a lot of those things just went by pretty quickly.
Right, but we have a prior knowledge of those things, so we're able to pick them up faster. But maybe it doesn't end until its need is ended. So maybe it
but imagine
his parents die.
The life cycle of the Tenza might live a full life cycle and then become a Tenza.
You don't know the Tenzas, okay?
You don't know anything. That's That's what it is. We don't know anything about the Tenza.
That's one thing I do love and also hate about in multiple episodes of Doctor Who are these throwaway lines at the end of the episodes where like Smith in this one was like, oh yeah, puberty is a weird age. I might drop in. So you're like, oh, cool. Like that maybe, you know, we might see some follow-up, but you never do.
Right.
But I do like that. I do like that they throw it in there, but then it's also annoying that, we're never going to find out.
Right.
But it opens it up for like things like Big Finish audios, like you know, just this expanded universe
Right.
because there's so much.
What if like some of the writers listen to this episode and they're like, oh, we need to make a Tenza episode. The
I
demand.
don't know if you follow Big Finish on Twitter, but they just
Do.
recently asked, like, hey, what do you guys want to see? And then they literally put a GIF of them taking notes.
Oh, nice.
On a Tenza
Tenza.
follow-up episode.
I want 10 Tenza episodes. Cool. So we mentioned Daniel Mays earlier. He plays the dad, Alex. He played Tivik in Rogue One, which is in the very beginning in that planet.
Yeah.
That planet
Yeah,
where he has
Shell.
like a cape. And then he was Sergeant Sanders in 1917, that recent movie, the World War I movie. And then he was Arthur Young in Good Omens.
Oh,
Oh,
Why did he look
yeah.
familiar? Okay,
I
that's
remember
it.
that
right.
role. Oh, he's the kid's father.
Yeah.
He's the
He's
Antichrist
Adam's
father.
father.
Oh, okay.
Jamie Oram plays George. This episode is his first acting gig, and he voices Freddy Frog and Peppa Pig.
Cute.
Emma Canafe plays Claire, the mom, and she's done a lot of UK TV series that I have not watched. Andrew Tiernan plays Andy Purcell. He's also done a lot of UK TV, and he played Ephialtes, which is the deformed guy in 300 and 300 Rise of an Empire.
Oh,
If you remember, like the hunchback looking guy.
Yeah.
that was a hard role.
Layla Hoffman plays Mrs. Rossiter. She's also done a lot of UK TV, and she played Augusta Longbottom in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Sophie Cosin plays Julie, and she's the mom of the twins.
Oh, right. I forgot.
She played Ellie in Only Humans and Wench Number 1 in Thor: The Dark World.
Wench number 1.
That means she was the best wench.
That's right. Next to the best boy.
Oh, that would be. I'm sorry. That would be number one wench. Sorry.
Louise Bown plays Mrs. Rossiter's Peg Doll, and Barbara Fadden plays the Peg Doll Soldier.
Say anything about the twins?
No, maybe because they didn't.
They weren't real.
They didn't have any lines.
Yeah, that's what I was
Oh,
thinking
that's
too.
True.
This is also the first full-length episode since Fear Her in which there are no casualties at all. Each
All
victim
right.
is seen returned to life by the end of the episode.
Oh.
It showed that on the Doctor Who Confidential on the DVD that Jamie, who plays George, had a lot of fun on set. Everybody seemed to love him.
Aw.
When Alex and the Doctor are in the kitchen and they're by the fridge, they open and close the door as they're talking. That was improv by both of
Oh,
them.
that was well
I'll have
done.
to
Yeah,
watch
it was
that
well
again.
done.
Like where the doctor opens the door and then Alex closed it like that moment.
Like, you need to leave. He's like, no.
Yeah, that was
Cool.
a really nice scene because at the end the doctor does open the door and gets whatever he was getting
Milk.
out of the fridge. Yeah. Like, I mean, as two characters back and forth and having the door as like subtext of your
Yeah.
fight, like that's really, yeah, it turned out really well then. Good for them.
So, Night Terrors, who is this episode good for? Or more specifically, this episode is good for who? A new viewer, a casual viewer, a fan of the show, or a diehard?
I really do think that this episode would be good for someone who's never watched Doctor Who because I think this is a standalone episode. There's nothing in this episode that I think there's homages to different episodes, but there's nothing that is plot dependent on knowing something from another episode. And I think it's a fun episode. So I'm gonna say that this episode is good for a new it's good for everyone. This episode is good for everyone. Everyone can enjoy this, from a diehard fan to someone who's never watched Doctor Who.
I agree. I think this is good for a new Who viewer, someone who I think it's got a lot of good Doctor stuff. I think it's a good episode. It kind of breaks the vibe a little bit, sort of like Blink did. Obviously it's not as good of an episode as Blink, but I think it shows what what Doctor Who episodes can be, and anything that I personally talked about that I wasn't crazy about is very minor compared to how much I enjoyed it. And there's not a lot of stuff. Help me out here. About other episodes. What's the
Connective
word?
references.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of other references to many other episodes that would confuse anyone. There's a few sprinkled throughout that more familiar fans will get a kick out of, but you don't need to know any of them to enjoy it.
The first time I didn't like it at all. I'm thinking only a diehard should watch this. And then watching it again going, no, I think everybody could enjoy this or watch it. It would not be one that I introduce to somebody unless they're specifically looking more for that horror, scariness. You know, they like those kind of shows, but there's still other episodes I think I'd pick first in that category of horror. But after watching it a couple of times and after our discussion, I am going to go for the first category of for everything that you guys have said before. I think anybody can just sit down and watch it and understand a little bit more about Doctor Who, whether or not they want to continue or not.
I agree with everything Frank said in that did not like it the first time, enjoyed it a lot more the second time. And the reason that I'm putting it in a new Who viewer category is because, which is by the way the category I'm putting it in, is because to me this episode gave me a lot of callbacks to Rose's time on the show and some of the old school episodes with the monsters that are kind of creepy but also kind of like what. And I liked that. So if you're introducing someone to the show and you're expecting them to then go back to the beginning, this might be a little bit of an introduction to that kind of episode. So yeah, I'm going with new Who viewer.
This is one example where I like our rating category system because it is not how much you liked the episode. It's a different way of looking at it. I don't like this episode. I think it's really low on plot. There's barely a plot and it's all mood. And they're really, really, really trying to get you into that spooky mood. I just kind of wish that they got to the plot a little quicker and maybe had a little bit more with Alex and George and the Doctor and George rather than being with Rory and Amy running around dark rooms. So it's standalone. It's you don't really have to know what's going on before or after. You get a good handle on who the Doctor is and even who Rory and Amy are. Not that I ever would, but I would probably do a new Who viewer, but I would never ever do that. And if someone came to me and said, I've never watched Doctor Who, I'm going to watch Night Terrors, I would say, go with God.
That was physically painful for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Because the rating system is not whether we like it or not. This would be a good episode for some people. And it would, depend on the person. But yeah, this one just kind of like, yeah, all right, moving on. Next.
Well, I'm really surprised at the number of everyone and new Who viewers for this particular episode, and not because I don't not like the episode. It did grow on me watching it more, but I do remember my initial reactions to it. My initial reactions weren't very good, and it still took a little bit to warm up to it. And I'm not as convinced that it's a really good example of Amy and Rory as characters. So for me, I'm going to put it into, I'm going to say a fan category, because I think even as a casual viewer, like this isn't one that I like to revisit. As we've said, like it's kind of a hit or miss for however my mood is. Like I did enjoy it, and I think it is really strong. Like the cinematography in it is great, and the ideas and the theatricality of the sets are really awesome. But as far as introducing someone to Doctor Who with this episode, I personally wouldn't. And I know just from my own reactions, like as a fan and as a casual viewer, like I haven't gone back to it, and it's a little off for me. So I'm gonna say fan, but I definitely hear what everyone is saying for everyone. Like I think those are all valid arguments too.
Okay, I know I originally was like, oh yeah, it was a Gaddis episode. I didn't really like a lot of the Gaddis ones, but if Gaddis is listening, I'm sorry, baby. I love it. It's okay. But to be honest, I think I would have to put it down as a new viewer one. Like I think it's well-rounded enough to where there aren't enough where it's self-explanatory. There aren't the questions that you would ask. Like I don't know if it'd be the first episode I'd really have a new viewer watch, but especially with what they did with the Smith era in season 5 and 6, where they had the intro that goes, "Hi, I'm Amy, and this is the doctor," and they kind of like give the explanation for everything right up front, so you don't have to really explain anything, and then you go into the standalone episode that's kind of self-containing as well. Yeah, I think if it was on and someone was interested in watching it with me, I'd be like, all right, sit down. This is Doctor Who. Like, you wouldn't have to go and fully in depth, like stop every second and be like, oh yeah, that's what this is. The only part you might have to explain is the psychic paper. I think I'd say new viewers would be good for this one.
I think that it's not something I would introduce anybody.
Uh-oh.
Did she freeze for everyone else?
Yeah.
Froze.
Oh no, we got so
Hold
far.
on. You froze! She's still frozen. But what if she's still talking?
She probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
You want her to come over
Can
to
you go
yours?
check on
Do you want me to go get her?
Go to your
Yeah.
computer.
All right, be back.
Go get her.
She probably saw that we're all frozen on her end. Oh.
What? Is she
Oh.
back?
Oh.
What? No, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
we lost
Oh,
track.
oh.
I know, I told her that she froze, but yeah, she was in there just talking away.
oh.
Oh, it came, right as you walked in, it came back.
Oh,
I literally just turned it off. I think it's frozen.
It's a ghost.
Oh
in the
my
machine.
Well, you're
gosh.
not there.
If
It's in
something
your
walks into that screen, I'm gonna scream.
That happened? Hi guys, sorry about that.
I said
No,
if
it's all good,
if
it's all
something
good.
walks past your other camera, I'm gonna scream really loud.
So yeah, what I was saying is I wouldn't introduce anybody new to this episode. It doesn't explain time travel, the psychic paper, Time Lords at all. Like, it could just be Matt Smith is like a regular human. You wouldn't have known that if I had watched it for the first time, I would have thought maybe he was a doctor, so who goes around and like helps little kids is what I would have kind of taken as like what this show is about. And he hangs out with these people, Amy and Rory. There's no explanation to who they are. I think that if somebody was really into horror and you wanted to get them into Doctor Who, you could show them that, but they might be disappointed by future episodes because they wouldn't match up because they're not all like this. And I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, obviously. We've all seen each other at Galley. But I wouldn't have watched this episode again if it wasn't for this podcast. So that's the only reason I would say that this is would be in a fan category.
I can introduce this to new viewers because I do know people that like horror. But looking at it, I'm probably going to put it in a casual category just because if you happen to watch this, you can get enticed enough. You can have enough curiosity that you can go and find out what the show is about. Despite all the things that I brought up for criticisms and things that I have problems with as far as things being explained too quickly, the moment at the end with the Alex and George, the father and son moment, still rings true. So that punch is enough for me to recommend it to some people. And if people are casually watching this, I think they can get a good spectrum of what Doctor Who, the show, is about. Thanks to Monica and Nate for coming along. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
You can find me, Monica, on templeofgeek.com. That is our website. We're a group of about 20 different geeks who volunteer our time to write about our passions in fandom. We are at templeofgeek.com on TikTok, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook. And then me personally, you can find me at This Dorky Nerd on Twitter or Instagram.
I don't talk to strangers. I'm part of Temple of Geek as well, so you can go to templeofgeek.com. There are, if you contact us things, you could email individual people of us 20 some odd people who work on the website and write articles, and we are, I'm gonna gladly say, international, because we have some people who are in other countries that participate in our website as well. Myself, I mainly just pay attention to Instagram because I just can't do multiple things like that as far as social media. Just known as Doc in the Box. I have underscores in the name. If you look it up without the underscores, I'm sure I'll bring it up. If not, oh, it was nice talking to you.
So on our website, we have a guide to introducing new viewers to Doctor Who. It's an article written by Madison Moreau. She's at Mad Whovian on Twitter and Instagram. And she put together a really cool guide that we like to kind of share. And it's nice because she includes, it's not just her opinions, but she asked on Twitter what other Whovians think, and she included all their responses in her article. And so I really like that it wasn't like her personal take, but what the fandom thought. And then the Temple of Geek podcast, we cover tons of, Doctor Who content, when the shows are airing. Nate also has some interviews from San Diego Comic-Con with the game developers of, I'm sorry, Nate, what is the...
What was it? Edge of Time?
Edge of Time.
The VR one? Yeah.
So that's on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out, as well as his reviews for Doctor Who episodes on our YouTube channel for Temple of Geek.
So thanks again to Monica and Nate from Temple of Geek and the internet for joining us on this episode. So that wraps up Night Terrors. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and we will see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by Auburn.
You can find him at auburnbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page.
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, enable the AnyPod podcast skill. Ask AnyPod to play the Who Knew Podcast.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who,
the longest-running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival, spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
Thanks to Russell,
Sydney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
Delia Derbyshire,
and all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.